Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Galactic Ambition, a Star Wars Unlimited podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Jason, and did you know, my world was turned upside down 1 week ago, causing a delay from this recording?
Yeah, I heard about that.
You would know. Yeah, so it's been a wild couple days. And sorry for being so late on this for everybody. I feel really bad, but I was out of my control. At least I think. Unless there's something I don't know.
You could just live somewhere else, I guess, where that wouldn't have happened to you.
Crazy squall line of storms ripped through where I live in Florida, and it was maybe about 15-20 minutes of weather, but it took power out in my neighborhood for about 22 hours.
That's so crazy.
A tornado dropped down less than 2 miles from where I live. Took a bunch of power lines down the area. One home was really messed up. I looked at the news, nobody's hurt, it seems like, which is good, but it caused a really big infrastructure jam up. So had no power, which means I have no internet, which means I had no means to talk to Dan about what we always talk about with this game, the wonderful game we like to talk about. But thankfully it wasn't very long. Thankfully nobody was hurt, but that's the perks of, or the dangers, I guess, of living in Florida sometimes. Some of this weather just comes out of nowhere in terms of storms, thunderstorms and rain, and they sweep through so fast. This one was I didn't even know it was coming. I was actually sleeping and getting ready for work. All of a sudden, my windows, I'm like, what is going on? My cat is meowing relentlessly, hey, you should wake up. Something's going on. And then, no power. So yeah, that was fun, but we're gonna make up for it in spades today. I'm sure.
I hope so. The other thing that's kind of funny is as soon as we scheduled to get this makeup done, we were like, okay, perfect. We have a time. We're going to get our makeup podcast done. At the same time, we're going to record the Grand Archive podcast for the week, and we'll release both. And then Maindeck Taylor messaged me and said, hey, I am stuck at O'Hare Airport, and there's no way I can get back to record the Grand Archive podcast this week. So we have to delay the Grand Archive podcast and release this one in its stead on this lovely Friday that it is today when this is releasing. So it just doesn't end. It doesn't end.
Fate is conspiring for some reason the past few weeks, and I don't get it. I wish it wouldn't, but it's okay. We're both still here. We're above ground, and we're here to at least get something in the books for everybody.
We have some fun stuff to talk about. We have some not fun stuff to talk about today, but also I think
it's fun. It's fun. At least it's fun for me. I love this kind of conversation. Actually, this is the part of the game I really enjoy when we talk about finances and stuff like that. So for me, it's exciting, but it's also a part of the game that I understand is not fun for everybody, and it's not fun that we have to deal with it and talk about it. But it'd be a good way to kind of navigate it for some people who might not be as familiar.
I want to, before we get to just the grind of talking about dollars and cents and how to make sense of your dollars. I just thought of that, but I'm sure that's been used before. Not original, Dan. Shut up.
No.
I want to just mention that I put up a deck profile this week for our Han Solo deck. Aggression Han. This deck has really captured my heart. It is super fun. I've been getting to play this deck over the last week. And I mentioned in the video too, Randy, who's a good friend of mine, we built this list and he's like, okay, I'm going to play it. He and his son have been playing the list and tweaking it their own and everything. And it's been a performer. Jason, have you gotten to play against any Han decks yet?
I've only played against Casino Han.
Just Casino?
Yeah. I think I'll probably play against more Han now. I imagine.
I don't know if we have that kind of impact, but
I think you would be surprised.
I will. I'll tell you, I would be surprised actually.
Well, okay then. But we had a big old tournament this weekend down here in Florida that we have the whatever K it is in Kissimmee, 100 plus players already registered. So who knows? I
would say that if I were playing in a major tournament this weekend, I actually would take that list. That's the one I feel pretty confident that. You have games where you just roll. You hit turn 4, you pop off, you empty their hand, and then they're just like, okay, I better top deck really good. And you're like, yep,
right.
that's you're out right now.
Yeah, and that kind of explosivity will take so many games just off that virtue alone. Catching people with the proverbial pants down. I hope their pants are not down at an event. That would be very weird. Don't do that. Don't do that. But yeah, it's just I watched it. I watched it yesterday. I was dying most of the day. I had this terrible migraine that wouldn't go away. I don't know. But when I woke up super early this morning, I was watching it. And after reading what you and Randy were saying about, it was kind of nice to finally see the full list and see what he had going on there.
It's not you mentioned explosivity. It's not only explosive on that like just crazy turn 4 play when for people who aren't aware, you activate Han to put a resource in. So you're at 5 resources turn 4 normally, you go to 6. Then you have 6 resources, so you can deploy Han using the epic action. And then you can attack with Han to get a 7th resource. And that allows you to do some pretty sweet stuff. You can play Mace. And I had a game where I played Mace and literally cleared 3 things off the board with him.
Yeah, on turn 4, it's going to be extremely hard for it not to get that much value.
It's like Mace, people. I just want to say that people are all about command, which understandably, I'm not saying command's bad. And, overwhelming barrage, so good. Like, I did 15 damage to their board that turn. That was better than I've ever had. I've never had an overwhelming barrage for 15. Let me tell you. I'm just saying that to point out there are alternatives, right? Yeah. To overwhelming barrage, to command, to everything. And Mace, like you really, honestly, Jason, you inspired me a little bit when I was putting this list together. I was like, Jason was talking about how good Mace is. Like, I'm just going to jam 3 Mace in here. And I have never once been sad to have 3 Mace.
I'm telling you, I think the card, it's weird because, right, it competes at 7. And obviously, if we're 7 and we're in heroism, and if we're trying, and a lot of the times when we're even touching red, it's like, okay, we're not even getting what deck is getting that far in heroism for 7. But in this kind of list, and then in like my chariot list where I'm like, heck yeah, I can definitely get to 7. Mace kind of just takes over the game, especially when you're deploying him on turn 4. Like, what answers are there clean to that? And typically in that situation too, it's not Power of the Dark Side because you have Han deployed as well. So you have so many, you're so safe in that regard, to at least in your deck, that Mace just kind of it allows himself to take over a little bit and make that mid game kind of something that would be hard for most decks to deal with. And I just like Mace a lot because I just like attacking. That's my whole big thing in any game. I like attacking, and Mace is definitely one of the kings of just turning sideways because he likes to do it a lot.
And what I was initially leading into this to say was that, we have that explosivity on that turn, but we also are just, the rest of the deck is kind of yellow, red aggro, just straight stuff. So like, even if you don't do that, you are pushing damage really consistently. You have Falcons, which is sometimes just uncontested and just win the game on their own. So it's a deck that can really snatch games away in multiple ways. And the cool thing about that turn 4 Mace play that I really like, so we're playing Mace, and we're also playing Han Solo, another good option, who takes over games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Forced Surrender, card that I mentioned this in the video, but Jason, I read that card when I read it the first time, looking over the whole set, I was like, whatever. Like, who's ever going to pay 6 for like super mind rot, to reference Magic the Gathering or whatever? I couldn't have been more wrong about that card.
It was one of those cards, once I started sideboarding it in and cheer it, I was like, what was I thinking when I first read this card? I was like, obviously too, there's been way more game to be had. There's been a lot more decks explored and stuff like that. But Forced Surrender, if this podcast episode would be cards we were most impressed about in retrospect, Forced Surrender is probably in my top 3.
Easily. And the thing that I love about that setup of, you got the Mace and you got the Forced Surrender, and you can do either turn 4, is that when the opponent knows, you're going to do some crazy Han stuff, they have 2 options. Number 1, they can it takes you so many actions to get there, because you have to activate Han, you have to deploy Han, you have to attack with Han, you have other things you can attack with to bide time if you want to, that your opponent's going to get to the point where they either have to kind of like pass a bunch to like hold on to their, you mentioned like removal, hold on to their Power of the Dark Side, not very good, but whatever removal
I was just thinking of things on turn 4 realistically they may have.
So like Vanquish is
that
an
could
option.
deal with the Vanquish. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So they can sit there and they can go, okay, I'm going to hold on to my cards. I'm going to pass out and wait for my opponent to drop their thing because they're not going to do all this Han activation and not play the thing. And that's when you go, okay, force surrender, pitch the card you're holding on to. It's sometimes it's just unpredictable. You don't know, should you be holding back to that on that removal, or do you just need to play stuff out before to empty your hand? And it can do either one, which makes it actually a remarkably annoying deck to try and like tech and play against also, which is why I think, like, again, if I were playing in a major tournament, I would be slapping this together, playing a few more test games just to like shore up any like sideboard, whatever. And I would be jamming in and just like exploding game after game.
I still have no idea what I'm playing Sunday. Like, I'm going to figure that out, I think, Saturday when I get some games in with my friends. I'm torn. I'm torn between 3 different lists.
What are the lists you're torn between for our listeners?
I'm torn between obviously Green Sabine because sure, why not?
It works.
Cheer It because I've been playing it for so long. I made some more changes since the list was posted and some things on other suggestions of some local players. I want to try that out. And then honestly, last week I played Chewbacca.
Let's go.
And I had an unbelievable amount of fun. To the point where I feel like if I was playing against Sabine out of most of the field, I feel pretty great about my chances. But I don't like my control matchup at all.
Yeah. That's the big thing about Chewie.
And I do think there's going to be a very strong presence of that. So I'd rather play a list I feel a bit more comfortable with and Cheer It because I've been playing it for so long, or with Sabine because even in the mid-range matchup where it's tough, I know that I still have avenues to win that, and then the control matchup I don't even really have to worry about. So I don't know. I still have no idea what I'm playing.
Chewie's one of those decks where it really is pretty polarized on either end. Like you have to really tweak the deck to have late game to be able to keep up with some of the control decks, and then you lose some of that a little bit of that consistency in getting those sentinels down and really disrupting the aggro matchups. So yeah, what aspect were you playing with
So Chewie? I was doing at first I did mono blue, which was a ton of fun actually. Mainly because I just like playing Vigilance in as many lists as possible. The card is very dumb. It's very dumb. When someone draws and loses because of that, I have to say it makes you feel good. Sorry, but it does. And then I built it. I built it in Cunning, but I didn't really care for it that much. But I really enjoy. I think I always go back to Aggression for all of my lists. Like honestly, it's just a lot of my cards are my playstyle in that I feel comfortable with those cards. I think I had the most success, obviously, for card was the mono blue version. I had a lot of just really powerful Sentinel consistent plays on chunkier units, and obviously you have really decent removal. And you could just play a longer game in that regard. I felt a lot safer in that way, but a longer game isn't my play style, so I really enjoy playing Aggression. I would say if I were to go this weekend, I would probably play Cheer It because I can't stop playing Force Throw. To be honest with you,
yes,
I had another insane blowout with that card against Vader, discarding their last Vader to kill their Vader on board. Just stuff like that. It's just I'll pay one, discard that last card in your hand, and it's just stuff like that. That just to me, it's too much fun to not play it.
I think that speaking to both of our analysis of Forced Surrender initially, I think something that players are really starting to catch on to now, like a month or so into the game, that discard is really strong actually in this game. Discard is a lot stronger than it is in some other games because card advantage is actually a little costlier to get in games than it is in like games like Magic the Gathering. It's a little easier to kind of pad your hand out. And in this game, when you are putting down your worst cards as resources and holding on to your better cards constantly, every time K2SO dies in that Han Solo deck, I mentioned this in the video as well.
I'm discard.
The opponent's like, I say discard almost every time, unless I'm going to kill you with the damage. I say discard, and they hate it because they're just constantly like, all of my cards are good. Like, yeah, I know. That's because you put your bad cards down as resources. Like, that's how the game works. I've had so many cards discarded from my hand in Magic the Gathering, and so I was like, I guess I'll pitch a land. I'll probably draw another or something. Like, it's like it never really hurts that badly.
Not how this game works.
No. So yeah, force throw late in the game, like no surprise that they're holding on to Vader, because not only do we have this, like, I'm holding on to my good cards, but you have things like our best cards in the game are typically unique units. Yeah. And if one of those is in play, number one, you want to kill it, generally speaking. And number two, the opponent isn't going to play a second one, generally speaking. Yeah. So the likelihood of that lining up is actually, it's more likely than it seems.
Yeah, they're holding a Vader. They're likely not going to resource another one. They were like, well, what if this one dies? I want to have a follow-up play. What better follow-up play than, another Vader? Well, yeah, I agree. That's why I did that. Great thought process. I agree with you. Now discard it. I just can't get enough of that card, and it works so well in that list. So yeah, I'll probably just play what I feel comfortable with, and it's going to be a fun weekend, I think.
I think that's usually playing what you're comfortable with is the best course of action when you can't decide on a deck. Agree with that totally. So speaking of Vaders and Falcons and Lukes and Maces and legendary cards, Vigilance actually, which saw a recent price jump also.
Oh yeah.
Today our topic is going to be the interesting financial situation navigating the hyperspace lanes of the financial aspects of Star Wars Unlimited, given everything that has happened, the sellout, the sell through at distributors. So before I let Jason wonderfully, like Ahsoka attaching to a Purgle, I'll let him shoot us off into another galaxy of financial discussion. Let's just really quick mention some ways that you can support Maindeck if you do really enjoy listening to Galactic Ambition. Of course, as usual, if you're listening on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or any place that allows you to interact in any way with the video or the audio, leaving a like, a comment, subscribing, 5-star reviews, all of that stuff is super helpful, greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much for everyone who does that. And we've received some really kind comments lately on the YouTube videos too. I really, really appreciate that all. Thank you so much. You have no idea. Well, you might know, but it really makes my day every time I get a comment like that. So thank you all so much for doing that. And of course, it supports people finding the video and finding the podcast and everything too. And if you want to support us financially, this is going to be the really relevant part to this episode today. We're going to be talking a lot about how you can navigate this environment with sealed product almost non-existent everywhere. And one of the ways that we're going to talk about is, of course, buying singles. And one of the best ways that you can buy singles and support Maindeck at the same time is to use tcgplayer.com. But don't just go to tcgplayer.com. Either go down in the description of the video and click our affiliate link down there and do your shopping right from there. Then you can log in and shop as normal. Or you can always go to bit.ly/shoptcgs. That's bit.ly/shoptcgs, all one word. And that will allow you to shop on TCG Player, getting the market prices that you like, but your purchase actually kicks a little bit back towards us when you use our link that way, which is greatly appreciated for continuing to grow and do everything that we're doing here. So thank you all so much for your support in all the different ways that you support us. And now, on that topic, Jason, how are we getting this discussion into navigating the finances of Star Wars Unlimited?
So I guess a good place to start is on the screen. My address is going to come up. Just send me all your extra bulk legendary cards. No, I think a really good place to start is where we kind of started with the market a little bit, right? Because obviously the freak out now is not the freak out. I shouldn't say freak out. Some people are freaking out. The point of this is to kind of assuage some of the freaking out of things and kind of get an understanding of what's going on. But really, I think a really good place to start is kind of at the beginning, right? At the beginning, most of our cards were, pretty reasonable. I picked up, my Lukes for like $30 for a set, stuff like that. And everything was great. And then we jinxed it. We jinxed it. we called.
It was our fault.
We were like, you could go to the store and get boosters and everything's great. Well, you can't.
Blame Galactic Ambition.
You can blame me. That's fine. That's fine.
Blame
I'll take it
Jason
on the chin.
specifically.
Blame me specifically. Call me out. But no. And then from there, things have gotten a little squirrely up until about, I would say, 2 weeks ago. And even this week has been a wild week. As I've mentioned in previous podcasts, I'm back working in the LGS space. And from that perspective, watching the singles market and sealed box market go from like 0 to 100, like it was hovering around 50 for a while, and in this past week, it's kind of spiked up. So hopefully, the premise of this conversation is to kind of talk about mine and Dan's perspective of this, maybe what people could do, maybe ways that will make you feel better about getting future product, and what you could do in the short and long term to kind of avoid this freak out or burnout of not being able to get the cards you want or product, because I've experienced that in other games. I know Dan has experienced it in other games as well. And I really think that it's a pertinent conversation to the moment. While it does seem a little spooky, I really think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm hoping we'll get to a good conclusion on that. So I guess my first question to you is, Dan, it's kind of hard to broach, but if I were, let's talk about sealed product. I think it'd be a really good start. Right now, sealed product has, and if I could pull my handy dandy, I have notes. It's like a little telestrator almost here. Okay, the box prices. Box prices have kind of gotten pretty high. If you want to buy a box right now, you're spending at least $200. And that's at least. Some of these listings are much higher. I guess I'll start with you. What is your opinion right now on sealed product availability, even in your area or anything like? Do you have availability? Would you? Is it at this kind of pricing or anything like that?
In our area, it's I think entirely sold out. And any boxes that are coming in are being held for prize support and for draft support and everything. So I'm thinking I know of 2 stores for sure, and 1 store I'm not sure, but I would be surprised. The game really popped off in our area.
Yeah.
So you know, we couldn't. I don't think right now you can walk into a store and buy anything. The last I remember was several weeks ago. We had a local player who, they actually drove in from about an hour away, maybe. Mm-hmm. They got to the store. They came playing the event. They're like, I want to buy a box. And they're like, well, they're out. Sorry. But we know that the other store actually just got in their final, our other store had placed a pretty sizable order, like the day before Asmodee closed their orders. And they got most of that, I think, delivered still. And so he said, well, the other store's got boxes. And he's like, oh, okay. And then we went and got distracted, and dude just disappeared. And he came back to our store, the other store, 40 minutes later with a box in it. Like, I got one.
Hey.
Okay, cool. Good luck. Proceeds to open a showcase on. So it worked out.
For him.
Yeah, it really worked out. He bought that box, I believe, at 120, 130, something like that. So box prices are high, and boxes are basically non-existent anyway. The one thing I want to make sure I talk about here, and I apologize if I'm jumping ahead of your notes,
okay.
But I think one thing I notice from players a lot who are, especially ones who are experiencing this for the first time, or is at least it's a somewhat novel experience, because I saw a lot of this with Lorcana last year and everything too. There is a desire usually to call out the stores who are pricing at market price, which would be whatever it's going for on the secondhand market. You buy it for an eBay or TCG Player, whatever for. And the, that usually it gets called scalping. Usually it gets called stuff like that. And I want to just have at least a brief aside where we talk about it in this episode, because this is maybe the only episode where we're going to find a good opportunity to mention that. So when I talk about this, I want to mention that there are stores that are doing unscrupulous things, and your experience is going to be your experience, and I can't speak to it at all with these stores and how they operate. Um, the stores I tend to know, and the stores that I talk to, and the stores that I listen to their YouTube and their podcasts and everything on, tend to operate above board pretty well.
Mhm.
And the prevailing opinion from stores always is that, you know, that they can't realistically usually price what you want them to price at
Right.
when box prices are higher. And it's very, very easy. It's very easy from our perspective, not being involved, not for your perspective, Jason, but for the perspective of the player, not being within the store, to just say, well, why can't you just hook them up? You're still making money. There's no reason that you can't just hook up your players, sell it at the MSRP, and call it a day. Um, this is I'm going to try and make this somewhat short because there is a lot that you can talk about with this topic. But there are two really important things I have to mention that sort of like push back on that idea a little bit. The one that I think was the one that like absolutely convinced me the first time that I kind of like approached this conversation and started discussing it with when I was working at retail, was that, well, the thing is, we can sit here and we can price everything at MSRP and just stick to it and say we'll never go above it. That'll be great. But we can be scrupulous so that other people can be unscrupulous. And it doesn't do the player base any good to say we're just going to sell everything at MSRP. And then you have the person who comes in and says, I'll buy all your cases, I'll buy all your boxes. And then they flip them for $80 profit per box. You can certainly do things like, and I sometimes I've advocated for things like, okay, if you've got like the people in your community who are like growing your community, you can hook them up a little bit. You can offer them a little better deal because you know that they're going to get the products so that they can support the game and everything. And they have supported you, the store owner, by growing your community. But otherwise, it's difficult to know who's who, right? Like you can walk up and say, I promise, I just want to play it, and stuff like, but there's also people who are going to be unscrupulous and walk up and say the exact same thing and then just go flip it immediately.
Yeah.
So when a store does that, it's often on one end just protecting themselves a little bit from getting taken advantage of as the end distributor. I think the usual thing that most good stores should do is like, if let's say it's 120 MSRP and it goes for 200 on TCG Player, they price it at something like 190. Okay. Like I think that generally is fine because it's less than you're going to get it anywhere else. They're still trying to do that, but it's a close enough margin where it doesn't make sense for the flippers to go buy it and flip it. Because after TCG Player fees and shipping, they're going to be losing money on the deal. The other side of this thing though, and I think this is so like, that's sort of from like the like logical perspective. The other side is kind of from the, maybe more of an appeal to an emotion or something, but stores get hit on both ends quite a bit from players this way because if a store prices something at MSRP, but online it sells for less, the store is going to be considered like they're trying to take advantage of the players and make money where they shouldn't be. So stores don't do that typically. Stores will usually meet market price. A lot of the time they'll say, okay, if it's selling for 80, we'll sell it for 90 or something. They have a lot more overhead to pay for than the TCG player flippers often do. And they'll price under, they'll like go under MSRP. At the same time, then, when the price goes over MSRP, it's sort of a double standard to say, well, no, come on, it should be MSRP now. Like, please, it's the MSRP means you're supposed to price it. That's the suggested price. You're supposed to price it that way. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. Like if you're going to be cool with the store underpricing it, then you have to be cool with the store overpricing it as if that's what the market is dictating. I feel like that's sort of a fairness thing that we should be expecting from the stores. And if you are going to say the store should always sell at MSRP, then I don't know. I personally expect you to walk into every store and they try and sell you at a discount. You should say, no, I'm paying MSRP for it. That would be fair in my opinion. So, there's a lot to take in. And again, there are stores that aren't scrupulous, but a lot of the time there are very good reasons that the stores are pricing it that way. And honestly, it's a bad situation for stores. No store wants to have to do this.
No.
It's not a desirable thing because it means you're gatekeeping players from getting into your game. That product was going to sell and they were going to make a profit either way, but now they have to price it higher just so that they can have stock maintained so that people can buy it who want to play it. Because if they price it MSRP, then it's gone entirely, right? So, Jason, what are your thoughts on all that?
So another thing I would like to add to that thought is, a couple stores got restocks around us, but they ended up buying it off of the secondary market, have product in their stores for
Yeah.
players, and that's something other people need to understand too. I've seen it a couple times on some of the social media like Facebook and Reddit, etc. They understand that sometimes these local game stores are really trying to do the best they can and are willing to go spend more so it's in the store, but they still have to make something back. I do know that 2 stores in our area had to buy at least $30 or $40 more to markup to have, because they said they were going to draft. And then all of a sudden they're like, we're not having product. And then they're like, oh, but we have draft scheduled. So they did all that. And then people kind of were having trouble reconciling, why did the price go up? It's like, well, the price goes up because if we're paying more, you have to pay more too. It's good faith is great and all, but at the end of the day, these are businesses. I'm not speaking for the businesses that are doing unscrupulous things. I'm just speaking out of experience and what I've seen. So people need to kind of take both perspectives into account and understand at the end of the day, these are businesses. Your best choice in all of that, if you're really upset, is you don't have to buy from them. Just close your eyes and move on. And I really think it's kind of something that I saw happen in Lorcana too, on a bit of a different scale, not quite as hysterics. But really kind of playing that devil's advocate again. Hey, if retailers are paying a bit more to have it in the store or trying to stay competitive with the market so they don't get flushed out, try to be more accommodating to that. Again, you don't have to spend your money there, but like bringing the whole Frankenstein pitchforks kind of approach to me, I don't think that works. I think it's a bad look, and I don't think it helps your local game stores want to continue support games or have events for specific games. So I think those people understand. Aside from that, locally, we're down to 1 store with product, and they're down onto like their last box. Limit 3-pack per person a day. Literally things like that, and it's changing daily, almost hourly.
Yeah.
Like first it was 6-packs, then it was 3. It was at $6.99. Now it's at $8.99 because again they could go sell those X amount of packs left and they don't want to, but at the same time it's like, again, it's to safeguard from that. Oh, well, I'm buying my 3-packs. I'm going to send my son in there and buy 3-pack. Like we had people doing stuff like that, around us. So it's one of those things that they're trying to do to just try to keep it in the hands of people who want to play the game. And also, again, to kind of protect themselves from, this kind of buyout and resell kind of flip kind of thing. But yeah, we have 1 store left with product. The 3 other stores, 2 of which I Patreon, 1 that I know of. That's Hour Plus Way. They've been out of product.
Yeah, it's like that everywhere. And despite retailers, raising prices to try and keep the stock, people are still picking it up. This is, to the point where we actually had that special message from Jim Cartwright that it was streamed a few days ago, which we'll certainly talk about in a little bit too here. But the product is just about gone, and at this point all they're doing is maybe, I think, like once a month or something, stores get like 3 boxes to support their play, and that's the extent of what they're able to get until that's totally gone. And it's not an ideal situation. Like obviously the elephant in the room here is that, like, when there isn't product to buy, it is hard for players to jump into the game. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not an ideal situation for anybody, and nobody wants it to be the case. On the other hand, I guess you could say, well, no, it's still not an ideal situation for Fantasy Flight games. But for Fantasy Flight, the nice thing here is that their game has completely sold out and blown expectations out of the water. I've now seen, speaking of hysterics, I've also seen conversations floating around social media now, which are very interesting in the way people are approaching. it's Star Wars. Everyone's passionate,
Yeah,
right?
of
In their
course.
own ways about whatever they want to be passionate about. Passions run high, and players are when we get into situations like this where we have we're being personally affected in a way that is disappointing. It's very easy to start to immediately try to it makes us feel better to be able to place blame somewhere. It makes everything make sense and feel good, and it doesn't feel like you're just randomly getting shafted by life. One thing I want to caution people against as well is, and I'm going to get called a white knight or whatever, but just hear me out. Is placing the blame on Fantasy Flight for this issue, because while I agree entirely that yes, obviously we have less product than would be good to have right now. We can say objectively the product was underprinted for the current demand. But the thing is, the demand for Star Wars Unlimited prior to the week of release was actually really small.
Yeah, yeah.
And despite that, they had enough to the point where a few weeks after release, Jason and I were saying, it's good. They have lots of product. And that was accounting for the massive demand spike that suddenly happened following the pre-releases. The fact is, a lot of product was printed. A crazy, actually, I don't have the numbers. And Jason, I don't think you have the numbers either.
No, I don't actually. I can't find those.
It would be fascinating to sit here and compare the numbers for what was printed for Spark of Rebellion compared to games like One Piece, compared to games like, I would love to compare it actually to Battle Spirits Set 1. That would be an interesting point.
Sure.
Like, there'd be if we could have analytics like that, we would really be able to make some interesting conclusions about player base sizes and player spending habits and everything. But we can't. But we do know that every store for months and months and months and months and months that wanted to get Star Wars Unlimited was free to order as much as they wanted.
Yeah.
Asmodee was pushing bundles on people saying like, order this much and you get all this free stuff. You get all these cool Gamegenic accessories, like buy as much as possible. Stores were getting cold called and solicited like weekly, like, are you ordering Star Wars Unlimited? And the demand was non-existent for a number of stores. How many stores, Jason, do you know that even personally that just said, we're not really looking to get into it?
Several. I got really lucky that the store I normally patron, me and one other player were the two people interested, but because we're patrons who've been playing there for a long time, passionate about our games, they ended up getting, I think they bought in on the lowest retailer tier. Had they would have known in retrospect, I'm almost certain they would have bought in the highest, most tiers possible. Another store did it blindly, buying into the highest tier, and they worked out. They're the last store at boxes because they got a ton of product after launch. They just wanted to be the Star Wars store. And as it turns out, they're like the last store I know of with product. Getting calls from 2 hours away, do they have product? And it's about to run out. But that's it. The other stores didn't even have solicitations going, didn't even know what was going on. Again, a lot of stores that were familiar were not interested in doing a Fantasy Flight game.
Yep.
And that kind of now, they missed out. And hopefully in the future, they'll realize that this game is a huge success and they'll get in on that because player bases everywhere are looking for product and places to play right now.
Yes, absolutely. I bring all that up because what I hear from the people who are trying to, understandably just again make sense of a situation that feels personally, affecting them negatively. I hear a lot of, Fantasy Flight should have known this was a Star Wars game. It was going to be popular. And to that end, I just say the two things are from all the metrics that we know prior to a week after release, basically, it wasn't actually going to be popular. And if we have those metrics, you can imagine the metrics Fantasy Flight has, which are going to be, more in depth. They're going to be better analytics. They actually know print numbers for previous games and current games. They're going to be able to find things that are a little closer. They're going to be able to talk to stores. And Fantasy Flight being connected to Asmodee has Asmodee's distribution network. So that's why I'd say they know closer numbers because they can compare that plus Southern Hobby. They have relationships with another major distributor in the US. So whatever metrics we have to judge it by, Fantasy Flight has way closer numbers. And it's very likely that they took all of their numbers. In fact, we know from this live stream that Jim did, Jim gave us some really fascinating piece of information, a really great data point saying that they printed more Spark of Rebellion than the entire first year of Star Wars Destiny, which I believe was 3 sets combined. In
That's
total,
crazy.
they printed more of set 1. People say, well, it was a Star Wars game. They should have known it was going to be popular. They took their last Star Wars, literally the last Star Wars TCG printed. They took that and they said, let's print over triple the amount of that. So they took the last popular Star Wars game and triple printed it or more, and it wasn't enough. And I just feel like at some point, and Jason, I assume you're on the same page with me here, but at some point, you just have to, you have to look at that and say, well, they obviously made the most, in fact, I would even have called that a crazy decision, but they made the most logical decision that they possibly could have given the circumstances. And at what point, like, they have there's capital that they're risking by doing this. Like, at some point they have to just draw a line somewhere. And I feel like that line is plenty far to draw. Yeah. So I have a hard time blaming them for this, because it seems to me like they did everything that they could have to try and avoid this happening. They expected this to last 6 months, and the expectations were just blown out of the water by anyone's expectations, in my opinion.
No, I agree with pretty much all that. And I think the biggest takeaway from this is that, first of all, for them to even do this live stream, because people are like, why is there a live stream today? What's going on? What are they going to talk about? For them to even put that out there, I thought was a huge olive branch in regards to those people who are kind of chicken littling about everything, trying to point blame. And second, the fact that they printed more than the lifespan of their first year of Destiny, which was a big deal around here. In my neck of the woods, the shop I used to frequent and worked at that time was popping with Destiny all the time. So to think that they put that much investment into, when it really, you and I could see from, socials and stuff like that, the buzz for Star Wars Unlimited was very niche. It was a small amount of content creators working on it. And it ramped up a bit more. And really a social media footprint was really just people sharing it like, oh, look at this game to be excited about. And then people going, oh, it's a Fantasy Flight game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's literally what it was. I mean, we've talked about that before. So people need to remember that what the buzz really only picked up after more people got their hands on, more people played it. And it wasn't because it was out there for people to play. That's another thing. There were plenty of conventions it was at. It was all over the place. It was in front of a lot of people's faces. They just choose not to see it because maybe they weren't exposed to it. Maybe they weren't aware. Maybe they didn't have somebody passionate about it or looking into it. And that's okay. And I think it's a big lesson learned for set 2. Obviously, there was some optimistic talk in that whole thing, the whole video too, the live stream for us, especially talking about how set 2 is going to go in terms of they're already looking at increasing efforts to making sure that we don't nearly have as much this issue for set 2, and obviously talking about the when we're going to get our set 1 reasonable reprinting in terms of the trickle outside of the trickle out to the LGSes. So I do think there, like I said, there is an absolute light at the end of the tunnel. This is a great problem to have, as hard as it is to say, because we're successful. Yeah. Everything's going great in that regard.
This could be Battle Spirits. Like, this could be
Battle Spirits.
For people who are unaware, that's the game that Bandai released last year, and it took a month or two before the set 1 booster boxes, which were MSRP of they were 24 pack. I think they were $120 MSRP, $5 packs for 24 pack boxes. MSRP was about 120, and they were selling consistently for $30 a box.
Yep.
Because the demand didn't exist for it. That's the wrong end of the problem to have. It's good for the players, I guess you can get in, but the problem is the players weren't there. So, no. It is the best. I think it's the better of the two problems to have. But the key is now you have to figure out when you're getting into the game, how do I navigate this? How do I jump in? How do I start playing when it is way too expensive
Mhm.
to buy boxes. And I'll say I don't recommend buying sealed boxes.
Absolutely not. No, not right
Not
now.
at this point, not right now. No, because I mean, while the price of singles has increased relative as well, it just means that it's more volatile. You're going to pay $200 for a box, and if you don't hit a Vader or you don't hit a showcase, you are likely not making that value back on that
Yeah.
box. It's just harder to do that. So given that it usually in a TCG, the best thing you can do is buy singles anyway.
Mhm.
Despite the prices of some of these singles, it still is the best thing to do. I think in this marketplace. Jason, do you agree?
I agree. I am of the camp that buying boxes only good when I want that hit. When a set drops, I want to open boxes because it's fun to open them with my friends. We all open it together. We have a good time. Da, da, da. Outside of that, I've never been a big box buyer because it's just I don't have those kind of finances to just open a box and, well, let's hope I hit. And then if I don't get something to trade or sell, then I could have spent that $120, $130 on probably kitting out on a set launch, mind you. I'm not talking a bit further in the sets. Like when this set launched, I did that. That's why I picked up the Lukes I got for so cheap. Vigilances, a lot of the cards I knew I wanted and was going to play. The ideal time for me was to get it when the set drops because I avoided buying boxes. I just bought them, opened some up with my friends to have a good time. So I'm always going to be in camp pick up singles. But speaking of singles, and kind of like talk about, they are a little bit pricier right now. What is your thought process, or how would you go about picking up singles right now, outside of using our affiliate link, stuff like that, But in seriousness,
Nice callback.
yeah, hey, got to keep the lights on. Um, and just like, what would you do right now if you were a newer player? What would be? I know what I would do, and I guess I'll just go first with this.
Sure.
The thing that I like to do when I see a newer player is I like to just, for example, we had it happen last week. We had a guy's like, "Oh, I picked up the starter deck. It's a lot of fun. I'm having trouble getting cards. They're all so expensive." I said, "Okay." So we kind of told him, I said, "Hey, look, right now, obviously the market is wild. You know that you are only able to get a starter because we don't have boxes and stuff like that." So the best thing I could say to a lot of newer players is embrace budget options. Embrace budget options and replacements for cards. It's a harder pill to swallow, but knowing that there are cards that could get you across the gap, they're not going to be nearly as strong as Vader and things like that at all. But understand that this game is still affordable to a point, that there are decks that you can play to still have a really good time and without breaking your wallet. I'm a big proponent of budget plays. Whenever I get into when I jump back into Magic every couple months or years, like I always try to look for a budget aggro deck because I don't like spending money. I have a lot of other things. I mean, in the modern world, adults, we have a lot of things we want to spend money on, different hobbies. I have a cat that eats me out of house and home that I talk to Dan about all the time. So, there's other things you get. So I guess my number one thing is embracing your budget options. Obviously using deck building resources like SWDB. Check out what decks are going on there. Looking at the card list, seeing what might work for you and your wallet. Don't feel like in order for you to play this game, you have to go buy a play set of Vaders and Bobas today. I don't think adopting that mentality is good, and I don't think it's healthy for a growing player base. The number two thing I think is get yourself out there to your locals and your community. You'll be surprised what your community will do for you. In terms of cards, I will trade and or give or help in however many ways I can with people. And I've seen in this community so far that a lot of people feel the same way. We just want a lot of people to sit at the table and have a good time. So don't be afraid to be at your LGSes and trying to make those trades. And maybe you don't have everything in your favor, but talking with these people, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how receptive and helpful everybody is. I haven't met somebody yet who's trying to gatekeep another player from playing this game. I would hate to find that day, and I'd hate to come across that person. Everyone's been welcoming and everyone's been so helpful. So I like to apply that mentality and those principles across the board when I see a new player, helping somebody upgrade their deck. If I have to trade a little bit out of my favor, this is anecdotal for me. Understand, this is not you. This is not anybody else. I want to make sure that everybody can play, and however I can do it, I will always do. And I think that's something that people need to explore, and don't be afraid to look at somebody's binder and be like, look, this is what I have right now. Maybe we could work something out. You'll be surprised. And then the last point I'd like to make on singles, and the best thing you could do is my singles buying strategy is very simple. I buy I usually buy on Monday, and this sounds kind of weird.
I know what you mean.
I buy on Monday. I buy on Monday because from my experiences, we take a lot of inventory in on the weekends. People are off work. People are going to local game stores. So I usually Monday morning, I'm like, all right, what singles do I want? And then I'll look on TCG Player, and then I'll see, and this has worked for me. This may not work for you. Again, this is just me. We're speaking from our own personal experiences, right? I usually find that when I buy my singles on Monday, I spend less. And I actually kept track of this when I was playing Magic for a very long time. I had a very dumb little spreadsheet and how much money I was spending. That's when I was really kind of I was like, I'm going to make, when I was like, I had this big budgeting spree like 5-6 years ago. I had this epiphany, like, I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to do all this. I'm going to do all that. And I was finding I was spending more money on Monday because there was more inventory to choose from, more sellers to choose from. A lot of card orders are processed on the weekends, at least locally where I go, at least where I patron. I usually trade in a lot of my cards on the weekend. That's when I usually have spare time to enjoy my hobby. But this is just anecdotally for me. Dan, what are your thoughts on picking up singles? If you were a new player getting this market, what do you think you should do?
I think, like you said right away, embracing budget options is one of the best ways to get going. There are a lot of good cards at common and uncommon. It's really easy to be pulled in by the lure of the dark side and think, well, if I'm going to play Command, I need Darth Vader. If I'm going to play Vigilance, I need Luke Skywalker, etc. And or Avenger on the dark side. Actually, it's another one that jumped up recently.
That's another one spiked up huge. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm not going to lie to you. Right. For their price, for their effects, those are going to be the strongest options you can play in your deck. They're worthy cards to attempt to acquire at some point, but to play this game and to be successful, they are not required. Mm-hmm. And I can prove that easily by pointing to every single game that I've played with my decks that include those cards in them, where I never once drew those cards and I still won.
Yeah.
That's the line I give everybody because it's a very easy way to realize, I mean, sure. Do I win more games because I have them in? Yes. But is it required to win games to have them? No. And if you are if you're from the perspective where you're sitting here like, I just really want to play for fun, I just wish I could get cards. Understand that it isn't necessary to have those cards. There are budget options you can play. There are cards like Reinforcement Walker.
Yeah,
I think it's like better than Darth Vader anyway. That's a hot take.
To me is cracked. Yeah, it's a hot take, but I love that card.
Okay, I don't know if better's. It costs more and everything, but like it's
I've won more games after playing Reinforcement Walker than I have won Vader. I would actually. I would actually put money on that. For me, I won more games after resolving Reinforcement Walker than a Vader.
I would also agree that has happened for me as well. So there are cards. There are top end cards you can play. A lot of these legendaries are just top end cards in your deck, and they, fortunately, Fantasy Flight built this game to be draftable. And when you build a game to be draftable, you put in other options. Like you can imagine if you were in another card game, Jason, if you were in a card game that had like archetypal deck building, like Yu-Gi-Oh, where like every set, a set comes out and it's like, here are the cards that you play to build the Kookaburra deck or whatever. That's cool. There might be an archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh now at this point. I'm not sure, but let's say you want to build the Kookaburra deck. Well, you need 3 of the ultra rare Kookaburra. And if you don't have that, The deck literally doesn't function.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
that's the card. That's the boss monster. That's the card that wins the game. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't a draftable game. It's not designed where you can sit down and not pull any legendaries and build a functional deck using the cards that you draft. Where Star Wars Unlimited is built, where there are all these options that commons, uncommon, uncommon, and rare that are they don't do the same things that some of the legendary options do, but they can do similar things. They can fill roles, they can function, and they will allow you to play those decks. And there are budget decks that don't even use any of these legendaries. You mentioned like Sabine Green is a deck that doesn't have, I mean, the most expensive card in there, I think, is going to be the rare K2SO. And don't get me wrong, I think that's the most expensive rare in the game.
Yeah, I think it is the most expensive rare.
And K2SO is great and is very worth the price. But when you start getting cards like that are like 4-drops, there are even more options that you can put in the deck if you don't have access to that card that will function even closer, actually, in function than trying to replace like an Avenger or a Devastator or something. Yeah. So I think embrace budget options is the number one thing that you can get your head around to be able to approach this game. And yeah, like, look, it sucks because of course you want to put Darth Vader in your deck. He's Darth Vader. Just from a thematic perspective, it's annoying that you don't.
That's
get
why
to do
I got the Lukes. That's why I got him.
Yeah, just like I put Luke in. It's Luke.
He's cool.
Yeah, of course he goes in. Turns out he's really good too. And look at the price here; it's up to $70.
I mean, I was going to talk about that at some point, but I think we kind of went off doing our thing on tangents like we typically do.
Yeah, I think they're good tangents, though.
No, I agree. I think it's all been good.
But you can totally find options to play the game, and over time, if you've got the store who's held back for prize support, you will start cracking some legendaries. If they're getting your like 1 pack a week, you'll start cracking those. Here's another thing to keep in mind. Store championships are starting to roll out for stores where the top cut are getting Mace Windows, and maybe you're going to have a budget deck that can do that and can top cut. That's great. And maybe you won't, or maybe you'll get unlucky, or anything could happen. So the people who are top cutting, though, are going to get these really cool versions of Mace Windu. And whether that's you or that's someone else, that's going to have the potential to add more Mace Windus back into the market. Mm-hmm. It means that people who are acquiring, the way they did this is if you are the finalist, if you're in the top 2 in even the champion gets 4 copies of Mace Windu. They get champion, finalist, top 4, and top 8. That means that there are, let's see, what's the math here? 8, 12, 13, 14. Every store is getting 15 copies of Mace Windu added to their local pool of cards. And the people who are winning these might be willing to start trading their Mace Windus. And you know how Jason and I feel about Mace Windu. Underrated card.
I think it's very underrated. I'm a big proponent of that card. Slam
it into your decks. And that's another option. Like, okay, maybe you can't afford Darth Vader's, but Mace Windu has also shot up, but he's right now, as we're recording,
he's still reasonable. I think pretty reasonable.
Let's just add more things that will age poorly. But right now he's a more reasonable $20 that you can pay to get per Mace, which used to be 10, but it's not as bad as Luke. Luke used to be.
Luke and Vigilance to me are the two that are just like, okay, all right. The wheels have come off a bit. And to an extent from personal experience, Force Lightning, because I was trading that card at like $5 a pop, and now it's like 20, and I'm like, oh man, because it was like the only legendary I would pull outside of my home 1 box, which was still crazy. I'm still
box was wild.
That's probably why I don't buy as many boxes as I do anyway. But yeah, there's budget options out there. There are gonna be more cards coming into the pool. I just think that if you're looking to buy singles and get into the game, stay the course. Don't freak out. Don't dump $300, $400 into Bobas and Vaders, unless if that's something you want to do. More power to you. Enjoy. Yep. Please do that. Spend responsibly, and most of all, save some of them for me, so that when I have money, I can buy them. Because I have a Boba Fett. no more Vaders, because I was trading them when they were like $60 to get like more cards. Because that's my big thing. If I hit a legendary, I'm not a max rarity guy. So if I get a hyperspace foil, I ship it. Same with like Vader, Boba, and all. I'm like, I can build 3 other decks with the stuff like that, and then I'm just like, oh, I need them. But see, that's that daily struggle. The Jekyll and Hyde I have to deal with myself. It's a struggle I have to deal with every day. But it is what it is. But I'm having fun without them. I will repeat. That's also why I've been playing Cheer It as much as I have. It's a deck that could, honestly, you don't need the Lukes in the deck. You could just slam 3 Mace at that top end and be fine. Or you could actually, the new build I'm playing is even a bit further lower to the ground, which has been a lot of fun. So understand that there are plenty of creative people out there, including yourselves that are listening, that will find decks that you can enjoy while breaking your wallet in obscene ways.
And, you should talk to your local players as well. That's another big one, is like,
absolutely.
Some of us who were really excited about the game bought way too many boxes, and I am sitting on like, play sets of commons, and I'm starting to dwindle on uncommons, but I've been telling since the game launched, I've been telling our local players, like, if you need commons and uncommons, hit me up at least the day before the tournament. I will bring you the stack of them, and I don't charge anything. I don't, trade or whatever. I've been trading my I maybe I'm going to regret looking back at this now, but I've been trading excess legendaries and rares for like hyperspace foils and stuff for a while too. That I have slowed down on because the prices are just so nutty. But there are a number of players in the area that I hooked up with, getting their last Luke that they needed, last Vader, last Falcon, last Fett, I've been happy to do that, and I'm more than happy if someone comes up to me and says, I really want to get into the game, but I just don't have any cards. I will slap a deck together for you, and I'll just give you, here's your common, uncommon deck. Find a few rares or whatever, or even if I have some rares I have a lot of copies of, I might just throw some in there too and like get people going, because I have so much extra stuff from cracking to fail to get a showcase that it's no problem for me to be able to do that. And I'm not alone. Your local player base should be the first people you talk to. Is just go find the tournament, head to the tournament and be like, I'm trying to get started, but it's tough. Like, who can help? And guarantee there will be people there who will be like, don't bother buying commons on commons. We'll get you hooked up with this stuff. And then everything else, pop to TCG Player, or if you're in the, outside the US, Card Market, or where, I don't know if Card Market Sports Star was limited. I didn't even look before this, but find your stores that are going to ship you some cards, and you can pick up singles for rares you need, and hold off. I think our general advice is hold off on a lot of the legendaries, especially the really expensive ones. Because when we finally start to get more product, it will be a while. But when Set 2 releases, even when Shadows of the Galaxy releases, you'll see the prices will fluctuate again. That's, I guess, the last thing just to talk about is the future. A little bit, right, Jason? Which is like,
that's kind of
Shadows of the Galaxy spoiler season has started, and it'd be too much to go through the spoilers now. We'll probably talk about it more in the next episode. But there's going to be new decks. There's going to be old decks that get powered up, and the prices on everything are going to start to shift. Because, like, for example, Luke Skywalker will not be the only like high-end, top-end card to play. You'll be able to have some alternative. There could be some other Vigilance, hero character that is really good also. That card itself may be cheaper. It may be better for some decks than Luke's, so that means Luke's might enter the market again as people want to play this thing instead. Or you might just want to pick up this cheaper high-end card, and it'll give you a different option to play. And as the set grows, as every set comes out, we'll simply have more options to play at those different levels, which will spread, in some ways that'll spread the value on some things. And on some cards, like, for example, Darth Vader might not get replaced. And it won't be until we hit that reprint in the holidays and more product becomes available that his price can stabilize and drop a little bit. So I would say that if there's anything totally, my advice for just watching for Set 2 is, if there's anything totally out of your price range right now, wait and see if it adjusts as Set 2 comes out, or if Set 2 brings out an alternative option for you. Otherwise, I would say if you are someone who has the disposable income and is interested in cracking product, when your local stores start pre-ordering set 2, that's usually going to be the time to get in.
Yeah.
I would.
Oh yeah.
It's. I would say, and I'm not giving 100% advice here, but given what we've seen from set 1, I'd say it's likely that you're not going to see an appreciable drop of the price from whatever your stores are going to pre-order at. I would say that's probably going to be the best value we're going to get for a while. And I think that it's not a terrible idea if you want to acquire just like a chunk of cards and you have that available luxury income money to spend. That luxury income money, luxury, frivolous money to spend is I think the word I'm looking for. Then pre-ordering a box or 2 or something would get you, a good amount of stuff to work with, and wouldn't be unreasonable, I think, to do. The caution I have is just don't pre-order singles. That is, in my experience, rarely a good play. Turns out Star Wars Unlimited, it would have been good, but
It would have been pretty good, I think, actually.
I don't know. Jason, what's your take on that stuff?
I absolutely despise pre-ordering singles, but if I could go back, I bet if some of these stores would have done pre-ordering for singles blindly, you could have picked up a play set of Vaders for maybe the price of a Vader, to be honest with you.
Yep, that's true.
But in other games, I've never been a fan of pre-ordering singles. It never seems to work out. Usually it's a race to the bottom, actually, when a set comes out. It's happening right now with Outlaws, with Magic. It's literally happening. Like the dual lands were like $1 for the what was it? I paid $1.78 for the black, was the new what? The black white one, I forget what it's called.
That's okay. It's Star Wars podcast. Nobody cares what that thing's called.
But it was like $1, right? So like it's a race to the bottom on a release weekend anyway. So wait for I'm never a big pre-order. If you really want to get singles on a release weekend, you usually just wait till everybody starts listing their stuff and everyone starts going, well, it's the other way. Pretend I went the other way. There we go. They're cutting the legs out from each other. I would say as soon as my retailer allows me to pre-order boxes, I definitely am. I was going to anyway, but especially now with what we've seen, I trust what Fantasy Flight Games has said. However, the best way to protect myself is to ensure I have product. So that's something I'm definitely going to do for myself. Pre-ordering singles is not something I'd recommend, but this game might be an anomaly in that regard, to be completely honest with you. But I also think, too, stores are going to inflate legendary pre-order prices because of what happened with set 1.
Yes. I think that's the big thing to watch out for.
Yeah. And that's not saying they're doing something wrong. It's what we've seen so far, right? We're going off of what we know. So that is definitely something to be on the lookout for. I would say with this, the future sets, if your store is doing pre-orders at reasonable prices, which I imagine most stores will actually pre-order at a reasonable price because they're going to be getting it at that, that kind of normal price. And there shouldn't be this, again, anecdotal. This is me talking. I don't expect to see $200, $190 out the gate for boxes or anything like that. So support your local game store, support where you can get it at a price you feel comfortable with, but don't spend outside your means. No game you would ever play is worth spending outside your means or anything like that.
Absolutely. Just my last note with regards to singles is that typically my singles buying strategy for games where I need to do that is, I wait for the release weekend, and then Jason, like you said, I like the Monday. I like the Monday on release weekend after stores have gone through their product, have opened anything they have left over that they wanted to, have fully stocked their singles. And at that point, everybody's hopping on TCG Player. And like you said, racing to the bottom. One person lists it at $19.99, the next person lists it at $19.98, and it just goes on from there. And that tends to be, I think, a pretty reasonable time where you've started to see, things can still drop a little bit from there, but also things can start to go up as the supply starts to dwindle. So it's it's kind of tough. You're trying to slip in and find that perfect time to get the best possible value on cards. And the thing about buying singles too is that there are going to be winners and losers. Some of the cards you buy, you'll buy and it'd be like, turns out that card skyrocketed later on. And some of them you'll buy and you'll end up well, I could have gotten a little cheaper if I just waited. To some degree, it's going to come down to your ability to read the meta, the potential incoming meta, what kind of cards are good. And the way I tend to like to think about it is the higher the price of a card, the more sure I have to be, that this is going to be a reasonable investment. When a card is like, okay, I can buy this legendary for $5, right? Will this legendary go down? Yeah, but is it ever going to go below like $3? Probably not. Could it go up? Yeah, it could go to 10 or 15 or 20. I do like an analysis like that and think like, if I end up buying these cards, if I buy a playset of this legendary and it goes from $5 to $2 and I'm out $9 on that, how big of an impact is that on me? And everyone's gonna have different lines or everything, but I just consider that kind of stuff when I'm deciding what singles to buy.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Again, it's about what meta-analysis is really good. Take advantage of spoiler season. You see something you like and everybody's talking about it and you think that's something you want to do, likely that spending your money on that is probably fine, especially if you were going to want that card or want to do it anyway. Just, again, the most important thing is just don't go outside your means. Nothing is worth it.
Yep. I think that is we've said it a few times, but it is such an important point to nail home that I think that's, unless you have anything else, Jason, that's probably the best possible message to end on for this financial focused episode of Galactic Ambition. Why don't you take us out of here? Take us out back from Peridia, back into the galaxy we know, where we can sit down and stare at the prices of everything going up on TCG Player with our head in our hands and wait for holidays. Before the holidays. What,
I don't think they meant Independence Day.
No, that was the funny thing in chat during Jim's. Like, everyone's like, "Which holiday do you mean?" Like, okay, come on, guys! Like, which holidays he means. Yeah, he meant Independence Day. Exactly.
He meant Independence Day.
The only holiday that matters in America.
Yeah, the only thing that will not be going up any further is the runtime on this episode of Galactic Ambition.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was a good one. As soon as you said it, I was like, that's what I'm going to go with. Part of the Maindeck podcast family. Dan and I have a bunch of fun doing this every week. That's why I was bummed to miss out. Glad we're getting this in the can for everybody to listen to and hopefully see your wonderful comments. And I'd love to have discussion with you guys wherever I can about this stuff. So for Dan, I'm Jason. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you in a week. As long as my house doesn't blow down or something crazy doesn't happen. See you in a week. Thank you so much for listening. You guys take care. Be easy. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.